But speaking of disappointing season, Zach, just kind of give your overall thoughts on how this season went and what you're hoping to see from the team moving forward. Later, we'll go and I think our next video will probably be us kind of putting our GM caps on and
Yeah.
what we would do as a team. We just kind of go over what um, your just overall recap and thoughts of the 2024 season.
Yeah. So I think that this was one of the hardest years of football that I've ever watched. Like I this year was brutal, dude. Like it was hard. Every single game was just hard to watch. Now, the last 5 weeks when we started picking it up, I was like, okay, I watch the Bengals on Sunday. All right, it's a little bit more exciting and they look like a respectable football team in those last couple weeks. But overall, throughout the course of this season, man, it was tough. It was brutal. Like they were bad. They were really, really bad this year. I would say that this is one of the most disappointing teams in the entire NFL this year, to be full on honest with you. And it's really, really sad when you see a year out of our three best players just get totally wasted like that. Because I mean, Joe Burrow by far and away should be the MVP of this league this year. Um, he led the league in yards and touchdowns. He threw for like 43 or 44 touchdowns. I mean, that's insane. He should by far and away be the MVP of this league. This was some of the best football that I think he's ever played in his entire life. He was making these acrobatic throws. It was this entire year was the Joe Burrow show, and it was pretty incredible to watch. And then you've got Jamar Chase literally winning the Triple Crown. That is a thing that only 5 receivers have done ever. I don't need to say anything else about that. That is one of the most impressive things that you can accomplish as a football player at any position. Um, Jamar Chase is the best receiver in the NFL. And then you've got Trey Hendrickson having 17 and a half sacks. He led the league in sacks by 3.5 sacks. That is incredible. That is a ridiculous amount of sacks. So when you've got our three best players having years like that, and you don't even make the playoffs, I don't know if there is any way that it possibly could be more disappointing and just like an absolute failure of a year. And I know Joe Burrow even said that too. I mean, this year was a failure. This was a really, really bad year for Bengals football. Um, Everybody in this entire franchise, from the top down, outside of those three players, was pretty dang bad this year. From ownership down to the team, there wasn't a lot of bright spots on this team outside of those three guys. Um, it was terrible. Yeah. Defense, worst defense I think I've ever seen in my life at every level of football. I genuinely don't think I've ever sat down and watched a worse defense in my entire life. This was like, I mean, it was astounding to me how terrible this defense was on a week in and week out basis. I was shocked at the heights of terribleness that this defense reached on a weekly basis. Offensive line was bad. That wasn't good either. That still hasn't been fixed since Burrow's got here. Um, yeah, I mean, it was just terrible. And then on top of all that, because of Burrow and Chase's heroics, you still lose what, probably 6 or 7 of our 8 losses by one score. And most of those one score losses were due to excruciating penalties that were either missed or were called and weren't penalties that should have been called. So, I mean, it's just, yeah, I genuinely don't think it could have possibly got worse for Bengals, like for the Bengals this year. I mean, outside of Burrow and Chase just straight up getting injured, I don't think this year possibly could have been worse. Like everything was bad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the two words that describe this season is frustrating and a failure.
Yeah.
That's the two words that have been in the mouth of Joe Burrow the entire season, and which is rightfully so.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, start off the season, you just have a complete stinker against the Patriots, who now have the fourth overall pick and very well should have had the first overall pick at home in Week 1. You score 10 points and lose that game,
That
and
was the worst
ultimately
I've seen him play.
that game put them out of the playoffs. They win that game, they're sitting in the playoffs today. And then, I mean, you said it, the one score brutal losses, the pass interference call against the Chiefs, the two Ravens game where you miss a field goal and a uh, 2 point, the Commanders game where Jaden Daniels throws for like 5 touchdowns. And I mean, you lose by a touchdown, but you have a chance to win it. Um, and yeah, it just felt like,
The Chargers game was freaking
yeah,
heinous. That went into dang overtime.
yeah. So it's just like nothing really rolled our way until it was kind of too late. Um, And it was just like every time the defense was on, you're like, well, chalk up 7 points. Like,
Yep.
just
Literally every single like we when we were at that Broncos game, like towards the end of that game in regulation, like when the Broncos would get the ball back, like anytime the Broncos had the ball in the fourth quarter, like I literally looked at you two and was like, they're gonna score a touchdown.
yeah. Like when Jermaine Pratt got that interception, I was like genuinely amazed.
I was I was mind blown.
Yeah. And then when we didn't score on that first drive in overtime, I was like, game over. And then
Yeah,
like defense actually got stops. I was like, holy crap! Like what? How?
yeah, yeah.
Which shouldn't be the case, but
That yeah, you
um,
know it's bad when every single time the opponent gets the ball, you're instantly like they're gonna score 7 points.
yeah.
Like,
Um, and then I think they only had one or two wins against playoff teams this year.
yeah,
Um,
it was something like that.
so as a team that has aspirations of winning a Super Bowl, obviously that's not good. You have to beat good teams.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned it, and it's been the story of the whole season. The biggest disappointment is you have a career year by Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. You said Burrow, if they're in the playoffs, he has the MVP. But due to the fact that his defense allowed 30 points per game, he doesn't have that. And it's not his fault because he literally is the only reason why they were 9-8. Without him, they would probably win 3 games.
If that.
And then, yeah, and then the award that he's going to win for having this season is comeback player of the year. He's not going to get recognized for anything else, which is sad. Which is sad, like you said.
That's
And
gonna
then
sit and collect dust in his basement.
yeah, he doesn't care about that.
No.
And then Jamar Chase has the triple crown, which only four other receivers in NFL history have ever done. One of them being Jerry Rice, who was heralded as the best receiver ever to play football. And he's not going to win anything because they didn't make the playoffs either. And Saquon Barkley rushed for over 2,000 yards. But um, like his triple crown's going to be forgotten in a couple of years. And he broke his own Bengals record for yards and touchdowns and whatever. Like he was phenomenal. Like you said, he's the best receiver in football right now, and amounted to nothing because they're sitting at home on their couch today. And then Trey Hendrickson has 17 and a half sacks and is just absolutely dominating and leads the league in sacks. And he's not really even going to get. I mean, I think he's third or fourth on Defensive Player of the Year award because once again, their defense was bad and they're not in the playoffs. So, like you said, your three best players wasted career years by all three of them. And we've seen that as hard as it is to say, and as painful it is to say, like you can't take you can't you have to take advantage of seasons where Joe Burrow is fully healthy. You
Yeah,
can't let them
because
wait
they're not
slip through your
they're
fingers.
few and far between, unfortunately.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's exactly what they did. Joe Burrow had the best season of his NFL career by far, and it amounted to nothing. So disappointing, failure, waste, all those words come to mind when thinking of this season. And I think they need to look inside and figure out, okay, what do we need to change? Like what's like 3 years ago we were, I mean 2 years ago, heck, we were sitting in the AFC Championship and we were a field goal away really to being back into the Super Bowl. And now we've had back-to-back 9-8 seasons and we've been on our couch watching the playoffs. So like what has to change for us to get back to that elite level football that we were playing just 2 years ago?
Hmm.
And I think Zach feels that pressure because a lot of people were calling for his head, me included, but I got off it a little bit, but I think he knows if he has another mid to bad season, his job's in jeopardy. If it isn't already, I think he's
If we
feeling.
have another season like this, then I think it is going to be pretty
Yeah,
heavy. Like, all right,
and I,
he's
I
getting
think
fired.
he's feeling pressure from the front office, which is good.
Yeah,
Um, and I think he knows it's do or die for him to, you know, keep his job
save his
into.
job.
Yeah, so, and I think that's why he made the changes he made. But um, I think my only concern is I don't want the front office to look at this season and be like, "Oh, we went 9-8. It wasn't that bad." Like we were just a couple plays away from being a 12 win team, and we'll be fine. We don't really need to do a whole lot. But you look at it and you're like, you were 4-8 going into December,
Yeah.
and had like a top 10 pick. Your defense was terrible, and like I said, you wasted a career year by two of your both best players.
Hmm.
So I hope they don't look at this and just be content with, oh, we scratched the claw of another winning season, and we were so close to making the playoffs, but just some things just didn't roll our way. Like, no, you are not a good football team right
No,
now. Like the
but
state of the
dang well, our front office is probably going to do that.
Yeah, but they needed to not. They need to
Yeah,
wake up and
I
not.
agree.
But this is not a good football team. You were carried by Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase,
Hmm.
and you need to put things around them before you're wasting their prime years.
Yeah,
And obviously, the biggest thing is T. Higgins' extension and Jamar's extension, which I think those will get hashed out. We'll see how those go. I know at least
yeah,
Jamar's going to get an extension. We'll see about
yeah,
T.
yeah,
But um, I think they need to make some tough decisions. And Joe said they've had a lot of tough conversations with. He's had a lot of tough conversations with the players, with Zach, and I think he's been vocal about what he wants this franchise to do and who he wants to keep. And um, I think he's going to have a pretty vocal point in who they bring in free agency, and kind of this whole makeup of the roster. And I think some big changes and hard changes are going to have to be made. I think there's going to be some guys that have been long term Bengals and have been really good that might have to be cut just for cap and because they're just not performing anymore.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
some young guys that had promising futures just haven't panned out. You might just have to cut ties with them. Um, this team is not a good football team, and they can't sit on their butts and be complacent. They have to act now
yeah,
and do everything they can to make this team better. So this is a huge offseason for the Bengals, and
yeah.
they need to um, make up for last year's offseason, which was a complete disaster other than draft wise.
Amarius Mims, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is probably the biggest offseason in the Joe Burrow era. To be truthfully honest with you, this is a truly make or break offseason for this dumpster fire franchise. To be truthfully honest with you, and I I could not like stress it any more that I hope that these people listen to Joe Burrow because he is, I think, the only person in this organization that knows what it takes to win football games, and they need to listen to him and do what he says. That's in this literally crucial offseason for this team. They need to listen to the only guy that knows what it takes to win in the organization, and I just hope they do that.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below what coordinators you think the Bengals should be looking into and what moves you hope they make in the offseason. And here in the next probably week or so, we're going to be doing a video where we kind of do what we would do if we were in Duke Tobin's spot. Um, and so stay tuned for that. That should be really good. I'm excited for that. And then we'll have a lot of coverage throughout the offseason doing mock drafts, talking about all the free agency signings and kind of walking you guys through that. So make sure to tune in for that, and we'll see you guys in the next one.